Hello everyone, welcome to this presentation entitled A Son Who Died in Childhood, a deconstructive reading of Wuthering Heights. I would like to commence by extending a warm greeting to my esteemed professors and fellow students. In this presentation, I will propose a reading of Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights from a post-structuralist perspective. To begin, I will provide an introductory overview of post-structuralism. As its name suggests, this theoretical stance emerged as both a derivation and a departure from structuralism. While structuralism sought to explain human experience by shedding light on universal patterns of meaning, post-structuralism undermined the notion of stable meanings by highlighting the ambiguities, silences, and contradictions that are constitutive of language. Post-structuralist thinkers rejected the univocity of the basic unit of meaning, the signifier. They demonstrated that the notion of a fixed relationship between a signifier and its signified failed to explain the intricate nature of language and its capacity for generating multiple interpretations. Terry Eagleton said it best in his Literary Theory, an introduction. If structuralism divided the sign from the referent, post-structuralism goes a step further. It divides the signifier from the signified. French theorists such as Roland Barthes and Jacques Derrida pioneered this shift away from structuralism. The latter made a significant contribution to the field of literary theory by introducing the notion of deconstruction. This concept defies categorization and has been widely misinterpreted as referring to a critical operation, something that the reader may do to the text. In Derrida's words, however, there is no deconstruction. Deconstruction has no specific object. Deconstruction cannot be applied and cannot not be applied. So we have to deal with this aporia. And this is what deconstruction is about. This perspective challenges the conventional understanding of literary analysis as an attempt to uncover meanings within a text. Instead, deconstruction reveals the inherent complexities and contradictions already embedded within the text itself. As J. Hayles Miller puts it, deconstruction is not a dismantling of the structure of the text, but a demonstration that it has already dismantled itself. By attempting to reveal how Wuthering Heights destabilizes the polarity on which its construction of Heathcliff rests, I will attempt to highlight how the principles of deconstruction are dynamically at play in the rich silences that permeate Nellie Dean's narrative. I will argue that while Nellie's voice foregrounds Heathcliff's otherness, in order to establish a binary opposition that divides those who align with the conventions of Victorian England and those who deviate from them, it also undermines this endeavor by betraying its own agenda. Heathcliff's otherness is initially signaled by his social and ethnic background. He's an orphan with no name to speak of, and his dark complexion marks him off as a foreigner in a predominantly white community. Nellie Dean tells us that when Mr. Earnshaw introduces the boy to his family, he addresses his wife saying, "You must e'en take it as a gift of God," though it's as dark almost as if it came from the devil. It is worth noting that at this stage, Nellie refers to the newcomer with the pronoun it, as if it were a thing devoid of agency and a voice of its own. When it was set on its feet, it only stared round and repeated over and over again some gibberish that nobody could understand. Heathcliff's symbolic induction into the household takes place when he is given the name of the Earnshaw's deceased son. a detail that is conspicuously downplayed in Nellie's narrative. The chosen name itself carries an unspoken assumption of continuity and inheritance, subtly positioning Heathcliff within the familial fabric. This positioning becomes more evident if we consider the attention and affection that Mr. Earnshaw lavishly showers upon Heathcliff, privileging him over his two children. Mr. Earnshaw was painfully jealous lest a word should be spoken amiss to Heathcliff, seeming to have got into his head the notion that because he liked Heathcliff, all hated and longed to do him an ill turn. This raises the question, does Nellie's omissions stem from an inability to recognize Heathcliff's rightful place within the family? Or does it rather reflect a purposeful erasure aimed at discrediting the legitimacy of his position in Wuthering Heights? Her failure to expand on Heathcliff's privileged standing might not only serve to reinforce his outsider's status within her story, but also constitutes a prime example of the narrative's active role in constructing Heathcliff as an outsider rather than a rightful member of the household. When Mr. Earnshaw dies in Chapter 6, Hindley takes over the estate, and one of the first things he does is to make sure to banish Heathcliff from the household. Once again, Nellie's explanation raises suspicion due to its conspicuously reserved nature, as she attributes this decision to Hindley's wife, framing it as a mere whim. A few words from her, evincing a dislike to Heathcliff, were enough to rouse in Hindley all his old hatred of the boy. He drove him from the company to the servants, deprived him of the instructions of the curate, and insisted that he should labour out of doors instead, compelling him to do so as hard as any other lad on the farm. A retrospective reading prompts us to explore the underlying implication of Hindley's consciousness regarding Heathcliff's latent capacity to undermine his dominance. By maneuvering Heathcliff into a status of otherness, both spatially and socially, Hindley effectively engineers a narrative of exclusion that firmly establishes his own authority and dominance, which is supported by Nellie's strategic omissions and selective narrative choices. At first, Heathcliff appears to bear his banishment with a sense of stoicism, but an episode that occurs later in the same chapters suggests that he is well aware both of the scope of his downfall and of the means by which he might achieve his restitution. His elaborate description of his first glimpse of the interior of Thrushcross Grange unveils a keen aesthetic sensibility that Nellie's narration had attempted to conceal. Both of us were able to look in by standing on the basement and clinging to the ledge, and we saw, it was beautiful, a splendid place carpeted with crimson, and crimson-covered chairs and tables, and a pure white ceiling bordered by gold, a shower of glass drops hanging in silver chains from the centre, and shimmering with little soft tapers. Old Mr. and Mrs. Linton were not there. Edgar and his sister had it entirely to themselves. Shouldn't they have been happy? We should have thought ourselves in heaven. This meticulous and vivid description showcases an eye well versed in the nuances of fine furniture and ornate embellishments, which challenges the assumption of Heathcliff's outsider's status. His ability to admire and articulate the finer points of the Grange's grandeur implies a familiarity with the conventions of the upper class that Nellie's account had previously obscured. Heathcliff's description, which Nellie reproduces in full, also reveals his nuanced understanding that wealth is not only about material affluence. He demonstrates an acute awareness that wealth is intricately interwoven with social status and influence, which offers insight into his desires and aspirations, undercutting his stoic facade. Later on, Catherine's anxieties regarding potential degradation in the event of a union with Heathcliff will confirm the latter's notions concerning wealth and status, while also serving as a catalyst for the subsequent turns in the narrative. Catherine's resolute refusal to marry him despite their profound emotional bond evinces her recognition of the implications of societal norms and wealth on personal identity. The weight of Catherine's rejection will propel Heathcliff on a transformative journey driven by his desire to attain the very attributes that seemed to keep him from Catherine's embrace. Fueled by a fervent aspiration for wealth and elevated social status, Heathcliff will venture beyond the moors, seeking fortunes that will help him enact his revenge. It's through wealth that he will be able to dismantle the systemic barriers that had denied him Catherine. The notion that wealth can be instrumental in shaping one's destiny takes root in Heathcliff's psyche, and he acquires an acute understanding that economic ascendancy translates into the power to exact vengeance. Heathcliff's nuanced awareness of the social significance of wealth challenges the binary opposition through which Nelly sought to categorize him as another, based on his social origins and race. While Nelly's narrative framed him as an outsider due to his lowly social status and mysterious background, his understanding of wealth serves as a potent counterpoint to this simplistic dichotomy. Remarkably, Heathcliff not only grasps the societal norms that have historically condemned individuals like him to otherness, but also astutely instrumentalizes those very norms to forge his own ascent. His strategic pursuit of wealth becomes a form of retribution, a means to subvert the system that once marginalized him.